Hey everyone, what's up, guys? It is Stove here. Sorry for not being able to go through and do some of these games like I usually do throughout the week. Last week and this past weekend, I was fighting a very bad illness, but I am back now, and we can go right ahead into doing these quick reviews on what happened this past week. Well, last week and this past weekend. Obviously, Missouri State actually coming up with a huge win against Middle Tennessee. Pretty solid there. Liberty even beating UTEP, so home advantage, I guess, didn't necessarily mean too much with Missouri and Liberty winning both away games. Kennesaw State, however, beating the Bricks off of LT. That's pretty good. East Carolina not being able to get a solid win against Tulane. And that's pretty much all of like the other smaller matchups of Thursday. Friday, though, we had South Florida absolutely dominate North Texas. Now, granted, I did watch that game. North Texas was giving a good effort against South Florida in that first half, but that second half really did a lot. I mean, you could definitely tell that Drew Mestemaker, which is the quarterback for North Texas, he did as much as he could for that South Florida defense, against that South Florida defense, but there was nothing that was going to stop South Florida after they kept on getting they had some struggles in the turnover side in the first half, but they were able to get some turnovers back for them in the second half, and North Texas really couldn't keep up after South Florida just put 60 plus points on that North Texas defense and somewhat offense too. But yeah, I'm very happy that South Florida is ranked again, and I think they can stay ranked even if they're facing these smaller teams. I just hope that they even make a solid bowl game and win in a prestigious way. You got Rutgers and Washington, who they had a very good game. The Washington quarterback, Damon Williams Jr., 402 points, and even having the most rushing. Obviously, my head is in the way of it, but did pretty darn well there. So very excited to see Washington has a dual threat quarterback that can do things like that. And obviously Rutgers and Washington, mostly Washington though, I think you can't sleep on Washington. Hell, that's exactly why Washington, Ohio State was only able to score 21 points was because of their 24 points, yeah. Their defense was able to hold Ohio State, but Ohio State's defense was just too good, being able to stop really Washington's main guy, which is their quarterback. Fresno State and Colorado State wasn't necessarily really a back and forth, but Colorado State did put up a large margin of points. I didn't necessarily see that actually happening like that. Maybe like at most 35, maybe 38, but not 49. That's pretty good for Colorado State. A good statement setter for sure. But then we go into Saturday, which you had a lot of ranked college teams and a lot of great conference matchups, which if you look through all of these, it is kind of difficult to really like take out some of these and be like which ones were the best ones. Now obviously you can say, oh well, Stove, you just look at the top 25 and that's basically all the great matchups. Not necessarily, because you had a lot of unranked talented teams facing off with one another, making great games, and I will show you as we get through this. But obviously Ohio State beat Illinois the way they did. Oregon getting beat by Indiana at Oregon as well. So, and obviously this is just pushing Indiana to be one of the next big teams. Now granted, a lot of people can probably say, well, Indiana should have never won that game. Well, how do you guys know? Were you there? Were you guys, like, do you guys, like, obviously, it's always hard to say, especially in college. Anything can truly happen, like this 30-20 game that obviously could have happened like the opposite way, with Oregon scoring 30 and Indiana only scoring 20. But at the same time, with college, it is a complete coin flip, especially if Indiana has gotten better from last year, which it does look like they have. Defensively they have, offensively they have. Now granted, Oregon and Indiana haven't necessarily really faced anybody besides their own conference team, but I'm just glad that Indiana did win against Oregon, because that just mixes up the whole Big Ten conference, and that's great. You want that mix up just so you can have something fresh, something new. And now since Indiana, I think, is going to be over on Oregon, I think this is like going to be possibly the first time that Indiana is in the top 4 in years, probably ever, if you think about it. Which I will look back on it. I don't know if these are all the right rankings or not, but I definitely was very surprised when I saw this scoreboard, and I looked at the highlights with some very good plays on both ends for both teams, and defensively too. But like I said, it shakes up with Big 12, the Big 10 doing this. This is exactly what we need whenever it comes to college football. More surprises, more results that possibly end up like this. Now, obviously, it may not seem like a huge deal, but to sports analysts and to people that are actually putting their money into Oregon, into Ohio State, into Texas A&M, into Alabama, into Texas Tech, into a lot of these other organizations that are so big, and they're hoping that, these teams are going to make it. These teams are going to make the conference championship. These teams are going to win a couple of college playoff games. These teams are going to make it to the national championship, or at least have a huge chance. However, it doesn't always work out that way. And it shouldn't, in my opinion. I think with college, it is an absolute randomizer, and it should. It should be that way, because it is always something fresh. Now, granted, Ohio State still looks pretty dominant. We do not know if they are going to be this dominant against teams that are in the SEC conference, that are in the ACC conference, that are possibly even in the Big 12. Now, granted, you could probably name at least 2 or 3 teams in both of the first 2 conferences. Probably not the Big 12, obviously, but mainly just the SEC conference and the ACC conference. You can definitely name some teams that do have a good chance of beating Ohio State this year. But, like I said, with college, it is just simply the coin flip that I want to see, that every team basically has this type of chance. Just like in the NFL, every team has their chance whenever going into the game, and as long as you don't take your eye off that ball, or take the eye off the focus of winning these games, then it will come down to a coin flip in overtime. It will come down to a blocked field goal or an interception that goes for a pick six. and it's great. It's just unbelievable to see. But anyway, I'm getting carried away with myself now, but you guys understand what I'm trying to come from. It's just great news, and even though people don't like to hear it, Indiana does look like the real deal. Even if they weren't supposed to, they did, and it's great that they did, because they're not just some small program. They are a huge program. There's a lot of huge programs that a lot of teams think that are just itty-bitty whenever it comes to these teams just finally being able to catch up with these teams like Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas, and all that good stuff. And we'll actually get to Texas in a moment, because they did pretty well against an Oklahoma team that I thought was actually going to be something like destructive in the SEC. Anyway, Ole Miss beating Washington State. Washington State actually putting on a very good show at home, away against Ole Miss. Pretty good showdown if you guys watch the highlights there. Texas A&M obviously beating Florida. Really no surprise there. Oklahoma and Texas. Archie Manning, even though it doesn't show Archie Manning's stats, he had a pretty solid day. Though I honestly thought it was going to end up being Oklahoma defense was going to overwhelm Archie Manning, just like all these other big teams were able to. Florida was able to do that, so I honestly thought Oklahoma was going to do that. But Archie Manning was able to stay calm, stay cool, stay collected. But not only that, his defense helped him out get possession the way he wanted it, and Archie Manning was able to place the ball pretty darn well, even under pressure, and he was able to play Archie Manning football, and I'm very happy to see that, and hopefully Texas, it can obviously get in the top 25 ranking again, but Oklahoma will drop back into like the top 15 probably. Alabama having a very close game against Missouri. Now, granted, Missouri did throw 2 picks. I think there was probably also another turnover involved in there, and Alabama was able to make sure to take as much time possessioning as they could, including like over 9 minutes in the fourth quarter, which was exactly what they needed to close out that game. So props to Ty Simpson. Props to Missouri for also keeping it a very close game, because Missouri is not this small, weak team that can just be dominated. Alabama knows this now, and that's the same thing with Vanderbilt. A lot of these teams in the SEC are not to be trifled with, just like the Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC as well. Now, granted, once you get to the smaller conferences, it's a little more difficult, but with all the transfers, the way these transfers are going down, especially this past couple of times with the transfers, these teams are also being able to collectively get the players that they need, put them into situations that they've probably never been in before, because they were a part of a different team, a part of a different coaching staff, and that's exactly what they didn't want. So obviously jumping ship can be a good thing, but there's also a thing where I don't like, where some people just, their freshman year expect to play, but they don't, so they instantly hop over, and I'm like, come on, dude, like, you gotta work especially if you were in front of a junior and a senior, or just a senior and you were a second string. You could have easily worked your butt off to be able to possibly start in the middle of the season, or if he would have gotten injured, you could have started right away, or by next year, you already have what you need information-wise, and you go in there and you fucking start off good. That's exactly what you need to get on pace for these things. But obviously, I'm going every which way besides focusing on these games, but I was just excited, even though I was very under the weather, looking at all these teams, looking over all the highlights of these games. It very much excited me to see all of the competition that I was able to see. And I think it should excite every single college football fan, and maybe just football fans in general, because a lot of these college kids are going to go up into the NFL, and they're going to surprise the hell out of us up there too, whether that's good or whether that's bad. But anyway, you got Kansas with Texas Tech, obvious a blowout there. Auburn and Georgia were able to go back and forth. Defensively, it looked good, but Auburn in the second half just didn't look the same defensively, and Georgia was able to take advantage and be able to score where it counted, and Georgia's defense was able to just not let Auburn score the entire second half, which was exactly what they needed. And Gunnar Stockton played a phenomenal game too, missing a few throws here and there, but still being able to get the ball where it needed to go. Also, LSU versus South Carolina, another 20-10 game. Solid defense there as well. But if you want to see offensive striking or offensive plays a lot more than defensive plays, you can look at Tennessee and Arkansas, because there was a lot of field goals that were made, so props to those kickers. There was a lot of touchdowns, a few touchdowns here and there also being made for big plays. The rushing was phenomenal by Deshaun Bishop. I was able to catch some of that game too. Again, watching all these highlights could actually expand your insight on each one of these teams. Now granted, you could also just watch the whole entire games, but if you don't have a life, it's a lot easier to do that. But Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, the Techs facing off with one another. Georgia Tech does take the win there though. USC was able to win big against Michigan, so hopefully, I'm pretty sure they're top 25 now, I believe, winning against top 15 Michigan in a big way, by the way. Phenomenal. Now, obviously, Michigan is not going to be the same as they were 2 years ago or even last year, but I do think as long as that freshman has a solid offense around him and that defense they are able to pick up some solid defensive players, whether it's the transfer portal or recruiting area, I definitely think next year or even the year after that, when Bryce Underwood is a junior and he's experienced and he's well-grounded, he's going to be able to possibly put Michigan in the position of winning another national championship in the next 2 years. So, obviously not this year, but very solid from USC being able to also be another Big Ten team to knock off a huge program or a huge conference program like Michigan. Notre Dame obviously wiping their butt cheeks with North Carolina State like it's their toilet paper. BYU and Arizona had a very good game. Sorry about that, guys. It was very weird. My video just cut out there because I didn't have enough space on my computer. You could tell I'm a bit of a broke boy there. But anyway, like I was saying before, I believe we were on to BYU and Arizona. But like I said before, it was a very solid back and forth game from both teams. A lot of rushing between both teams. Obviously, LJ Martin does take the lead rushing, and solid game for him. But BYU does come out on top. Arizona was trying to get that win at home, but BYU was just a better team that day, and very solid game between both of them though. Arizona State versus Utah. Utah clearly showed that just because they lost against Texas Tech does not mean that they are out of the running for the Big 12 Conference Championship. And obviously, we are past the middle of the college football schedule, so with that's a huge win, especially against Arizona State. That is a huge statement for Utah that they put out a pretty good game, but at the same time, it was a lot of reasoning. It was a lot of defense that won Utah that game as well. So again, pretty solid though. Arizona State actually gets upsetted by Colorado. And yes, I did say upsetted because Colorado has been losing quite a bit. And they end up winning against Arizona State, who was like in the top 2 or top 3 in the Big 12. And Colorado just took them down at home. So very solid win against them, and an unexpected win, to be honest. But the way Arizona State has been playing, is it really a surprise? Not necessarily. I mean, I am kind of still surprised that Colorado State had been able to do that. But, you know, it was going to happen against a team that had seen the flaws of Arizona State, and Colorado was able to be the ones to capitalize on that. You got Florida State, who got upsetted by Pittsburgh. So Pitt was able to upset Florida State, especially at Florida State's home, which was pretty interesting. I believe that's Pittsburgh's quarterback, Mason. I cannot pronounce Henschel. 321 yards, I believe. So solid game for that kid there. A lot of passing for sure. And UCLA beating the crap out of Michigan State. No surprise there, but you would have thought that Michigan State would have given a little bit more fight at home. But at least SMU, being at home, they beat the crap out of Stanford. Another solid win for Cincinnati. Obviously, everyone's giving big props to Cincinnati being the standalone in the Big 12, being on top, the only team right there. And yeah, technically they have actually gotten more. I believe they're tied with the most conference games played already with Iowa State, or they do have the most conference games right now played, and that's why they are 3-0 right now from what I've seen. But solid win against UCF. Do I think that Cincinnati's going to stay up top there? Who knows? It may turn out to be that way, but I do think it'll actually come down to mainly BYU. I think Iowa State is iffy. Arizona State is also iffy, but they have that chance. Texas Tech and Utah have a huge chance. So I really don't think Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati is going to be a top 6 team in the Big 12, but I don't see them getting anywhere unless, you know, some things happen to where they sneak themselves into that second spot to get into that conference game, that conference championship game. It may just happen, but again, it's all about who wins and who loses at the end of the year, and also who Cincinnati has already won against. But speaking of Big 12, you had Houston, huge game away at Oklahoma, 39-17 against Oklahoma State. Solid passing game too. So pretty impressive there. James Madison able to win at home against Louisiana. Army being able to beat Charlotte 24-7. Miami, Ohio able to beat Akron. And funny enough, the main leading linebacker, who I think is the most leading tackles on that team. And I think I saw somewhere last week or the week before, that Adam Trick, who is a Wayne alum, who I was able to not necessarily play with, but basically be on the team with. I saw him do incredible things whenever he wasn't injured, but whenever he was injured, he was still in the weight room. He was still trying to get better, and I think that's exactly what he's been trying to do. And the fact that he's stayed on that Miami, Ohio team is great, because I think he's the type of guy that won't leave for a bigger team. I think he enjoys his time being there. And now, granted, he could end up transferring somewhere, but I think he's just fine where he is, and he's flourishing as a defensive player over there when he's not injured. And the fact that he went from being a linebacker, mainly a middle linebacker for Wayne High School, he was able to he was a linebacker a little bit his freshman year of Miami, Ohio, but once he got bigger muscle-wise, they just slotted him down into the defensive line. Occasionally, I think he does get some linebacker playing time for sure, but at the same time, defensive line is where he's gotten more comfortable at, especially since he's tall, he's fast, he's stronger than a fucking ox. Excuse my language, but that's not even putting it lightly, in my opinion. The guy is someone to watch whenever you want to see some defensive plays. So wouldn't be surprised if if you hear his name more and more, if Miami, Ohio does more winning like they have been. Toledo getting beat by Bowling Green, Eastern Michigan being able to beat Northern Illinois, Penn State losing against Northwestern, and that was, I believe, 3 straight losses, I believe, that Penn State had to endure. And yes, obviously you guys have already heard the news that their head coach, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but the head coach of Penn State did get fired and actually got his contract bought out for basically $49 million, but I think it was a little bit more than that. So $49 to $50 million was bought out from that college. They wanted him out of there, and a lot of fans wanted him out of there too, so it wasn't just the college. And I just only wonder who's going to, be that next coach for them. Obviously, I think it's their offensive coordinator coach who's going to be the interim head coach until they can find a new head coach, which, to be honest, if they continue to play like a certain way, I'm pretty sure it's James Franklin who was the head coach. Sorry about that. I'm pretty sure it was James Franklin, if I'm saying his name wrong. But anyway, if they continue to play like this, I would have to say it wouldn't have just been James Franklin's fault. Just in my opinion. If they continue to play like this and they continue to lose to teams that they shouldn't be losing to, I just don't think that it was all James Franklin's fault if that's the case. Now, with him gone, are we going to see something different? Are we going to see the same exact stuff, or are we going to see some switch-ups, some new players being able to get some reps throughout the season? Is there going to be a lot of change or just a few minute changes? But anyway, Nebraska beating Maryland, pretty solid back and forth game there. Like I said, Big 12. I mean, jeez, my mind is on Big 12 because I think that's like the most underrated conference right now. But Nebraska, I say this with all due respect to other conferences, but the Big 10 just has a lot more teams in my opinion, that are able to upset each other and other teams than what a lot of people think. And it continues to show that Nebraska able to beat Maryland, Northwestern be able to beat an athletic team like Penn State, Wake Forest being able to beat Oregon State, even though Oregon State really hasn't been anything really in years. TCU getting beat by Kansas State, that's kind of a surprise, but being that Kansas State was at home, it was not necessarily too much of a surprise. Air Force and UNLV, a true back and forth game. Fireworks were happening, rushing and passing wise. So if you guys are able to find some highlights on that game, go watch that, because that looks incredible to me. And you got some more small matchups here. Nevada. Navy was able to beat Temple in a very close game. Iowa was able to completely blow out Wisconsin, which is a shock to me. And the shock is that it's like, besides the 96 rushing yards, I mean, the such low passing and rushing, in my opinion, it just doesn't match the 37-0 to me. I mean, it doesn't. It's kind of crazy, unless I didn't necessarily see too much of that game because it played like more later into the night, and I was just trying to get some rest. But that's crazy to even see that, which it's great to see that Iowa's able to do stuff like that. I think that's the best that they're going to do, to be honest, but we'll just have to wait and see. Wyoming beating San Jose State. To me, it's not much of a shock there. Minnesota being able to win at home against Purdue. Clemson being able to wipe the floor with Boston College. Clemson is still showing some back and forth stuff. They are able to beat teams that they should beat, but whenever it comes to like facing teams that are going to be a bit of a challenge for them, they don't seem to necessarily go up to the challenge, if you know what I mean. Like, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, especially in that first half where it just feels like they're flat, and then once in that second half, it's just a little too late to be able to try to put points on the board. But speaking of putting points on the board, UTSA being able to score against Rice just as, like, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy, but love to see it for a small program like that. Troy versus Texas State, that was a shootout for sure, with one, if not both of their quarterbacks having over 300 passing yards. But Tucker Kilcruss, I'm butchering that last name, but 415 passing yards. That is absolutely crazy. Boise State able to win against New Mexico, no problem there, even though I do think Boise State is still allowing way too many points. San Diego State being able to beat Nevada, and Hawaii being able to beat Utah State, with Hawaii's quarterback getting 413 passing yards. So solid game for Hawaii. Maybe some looks for them here and there throughout the next few weeks or next couple of weeks. Anyway, you guys, that was pretty much it. Sorry for the weirdness in between the video. Hopefully I can put the video clip, which was like, I think 18 minutes, and this video clip of just about 16 minutes together, and hopefully be able to turn some things around for you guys. But hopefully I can be a little bit more on track with my recording now. I'm feeling a lot better. Obviously I feel a little bit more nasally, well, a little less nasally, but still it's kind of there. But again, feeling a lot better, and hopefully we can get more and more into this. So hopefully you guys can, by the time this is coming out, I should already be recording a video for the review of Week 6 NFL. So appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think of the video. Like, subscribe, comment if you want, do all kinds of stuff. Let me know what you think of the video. And as always, you guys have a very nice day. Peace.